Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Ball and All podcast. This is the Basketball Africa League edition of the podcast where I do a basketball daily recap, essentially to discuss what's happened throughout the previous days Basketball Africa League. We had action over this weekend. It was the first of the playoffs, the first 2 days of the playoffs, which is the quarterfinals. It's a quarterfinal, semifinal, and finals for the Basketball Africa League. And so, in essence, we had teams fighting to stay in Kigali and try and go through at the four best teams in the Nile Conference, the four best teams in the Sahara Conference. We're going to start with the first game of the Basketball Africa League of the quarterfinals, which was Petro de Luanda. That was number 2 out of the Nile Conference against number 3 out of the Sahara Conference. That was AS Saleh, who have the MVP of last year, Terrell Stogwin, on their team. It didn't go the way that AS Saleh wanted, as Petro de Luanda became hot from 3. If you've listened to my podcasts and discussions around the Basketball Africa, that's what Petro de Luanda are. They're a really good 3-point shooting team. They live and die by the 3, but they've also got some great plays on the inside, and they made Saleh work. They made them work for everything. Saleh could not defend the perimeter at all. Petro de Luanda ended up with 19 out of 36 3-point shots. That's 53% in total, with Carlos Moraes finishing on 27 points. Childe Dundao, their point guard, he finished on 19. And Gaku, who is their center, he finished on 12 points from the arc, which kind of tells you the tail of the tape. Saleh just could not shut Petro de Luanda down. On the other side, obviously, when you have one of the best players on the court in Terrell Stogwin, Petro de Luanda decided to shut him down, to nullify him. And Terrell Stogwin didn't have much joy, as he only ended up with 19 points. Who was a really great force for them in Dakar. He scored 20 points. Also had Usman Drame. He was the addition from Guinea. You allowed a few players to be added to your squad for the playoffs. He finished with 19 points and 13 rebounds. He caused a lot of problems for Petro on the inside. It's just that Saleh could not muster it up. And as Coach Liz Mills said, she said if I had 5 players who could defend, we would be sitting on the other side. And that was quite the interesting one. So Petro de Luanda moved on to face the winner of Reg versus FAP, which was the I thought this game, the Saleh game in Luanda, would be the upset, but we got an upset with a 1 versus 4 tie. Reg, remember, finishing first in the Sahara Conference, beating Monastir. On that day, they just rained down threes in Dakar. And then FAP came through. Remember, FAP finished 4th. They lost by 3 points to Cape Town Tigers. And that effectively made them finish in 4th. And in that, they then won their biggest game in Basketball Africa League history. They've been here for both seasons, and they beat Reg by 1 point. It was a 3-point game. It just, in the end, it just was Reg just one sit on the 3. They just lived by the 3, and if you live by the 3, you're going to die by the 3, and it wasn't falling. It was really not great from Reg to see how they were. Their offense just was stifled. It felt like they panicked in the final few minutes of the game. Didier Ndizeye scored 11 points. Michael Thomas, Cleveland Michael Thomas, who's the American on the Reg team, he scored 23 points, but it felt like it was a one-man show with him. And it was a surprising thing because obviously what FAP give you is great defense. What FAP give you is proper defense on the perimeter. They can defend on the inside, not so much because they don't have a lot of height, but they've got length, and that's what they did in this game. 63 points against the number 1 seed. They'd take that any day, and they'd throw at it, and they did. And they came through Mormon, who was Deshaun Mormon, who was there in Dakar, in Cairo for FAP. He came through with 14 points. Byers with 10 points, and they came through. Reg will kill themselves because they had 25 turnovers, and those last 2 minutes were not great. It wasn't a great end, and the home team, the Rwandan home team, Reg, is out of the tournament. And Fab move on to play Petro de Luanda in a rematch of their game in Cairo, where Petro de Luanda won by 13 points. So that's going to be the first semi-final. Then we moved on to Sunday's games. The first game was Cape Town Tigers against US Monastir. This was also a potential upset if the Tigers could get there. And the Tigers were largely in the game going all the way through up until the beginning of the fourth quarter, where the lead just blew away. The Tigers really did struggle from an efficiency perspective. The team that shot better was Monastir. They defended the Cape Town Tigers a lot better. You just felt as though there was always an extra shooter for Monastir, but for the Tigers there wasn't. And for Monastir, the bench points compared to Tigers was chalk and cheese. 9 points from the Tigers of 14 attempts. I think they had about 40 points from the bench, did Monastir. Largely they came from the fourth quarter, because in the fourth quarter it seemed like it was all she wrote. But the Tigers really did try. Billy Preston scored 17 points. Clay Anthony Early, who was the addition for this one. He scored 15 points. Evans Gamapano 10 points. Prinsloo with 14 points. And that was largely it. It was the starters could compete, but the bench wasn't at that quality that Monastir needed it to be at. Because, for instance, right, the Tigers did well to silence Ate Majok, who I thought was the focal point for Monastir, because there is a mismatch between him and Peter Prinsloo. Majok's a lot more physical, is a lot taller, so there's that mismatch there. That never happened. They actually defended him well. It was everybody else. It was Radwan Sliman, who's 41 years old. He scored 16 points. You also had Michael Dixon, who scored 23 points, 75% from the field. That's how efficient they were from the field. Gayaza, who is a great Gayaza is a great backup center for Monastir, and he stepped up. He scored 13 points, and Solo Diabate, the guy they got from Zamalek, he scored 13 points. It was a really good offensive performance. Good to see that Monastir is humming at all cylinders. It kind of feels like Monastir have been playing since they left Dakar. In the league, they won the Tunisian league just before they got to Kigali, whereas the Tigers got home from Cairo. Not a lot of games there. They did play a few warm-up games here and there, but you can see that one team was hot, the other team, yes, with lesser quality players and guys who've done really well to get to where they are from South Africa, not necessarily being able to reach those levels. They weren't as efficient. I think they shot 35% from the field. That doesn't win you a playoff game. 35% from the field. Cape Town Tigers, I know they can be better, doesn't win them a playoff game, and that's where the disappointment is that they could be better, and it didn't. Obviously, Jamel Artis wasn't there. There's a lot of questions around him and what happened with him not being available. Tigers saying he's injured, him saying no, he could have actually played. He was really important to them in Cairo. I think they missed him. But Clay Anthony Early did a really good job. Lebesa Selepe did really well coming on from a defensive perspective. I think maybe they should have rejigged that starting lineup, put one more defensive player, because Monastir was just cutting. And they just found guys. Whereas the Tigers were just a step slower. And on offense, the Tigers just weren't moving. It was, we get to the half court, we move the ball around once or twice, and that's it. Or get into a screen based on who the ball handler is, and wherever the ball handler wants, he'll decide whether he shoots or he passes or he lets it go. There were some really good threes up front. They did try and hold Monastir to a two-shot lead, but it opened up as it went on. Turnovers as well, just needless turnovers at the wrong time, just changed the momentum of the game slowly, and it's like a knife in your back, just keeps on getting dug in all the way through. Final game of the quarterfinals was the defending champion Zamalek, the number 1 team out of the Nile Conference, against Slaku, the number 4 team in the Dakar Conference. Remember I said 35% doesn't win you a playoff game? 35% field goal doesn't win you a playoff game? Zamalek scored 31% from the field yesterday. And remember I also said, if you're number 4 and you're playing a number 1 and you are the number 1 only scores about 63 points, you take that as FAP, and FAP did. This game, Zamalek scored 66 points, and Slack could only score 49. Missed opportunity for Slack here, I believe. They were much better efficiently from the field. Zamalek aren't a great 3-point shooting team, but Edgar Sosa is their guy. He just wasn't there. He scored about 13 points. He wasn't there. Pedro scored 14 points. He was the leading scorer there. It just wasn't a pretty game of basketball across both sides. But Slack just kept on letting go of the key things. They won the rebounding battle. They won the points in the paint battle. They lost the second chance points battle. They lost the points from turnovers battle, and they also lost the fast break points battle. It tells me that they were nervous. It tells me you turn the ball over. It allowed Zamalek to kind of get some easy buckets, and that would make their coach really, really disappointed because this was their opportunity. Slack really could not do much. If you think about it from a scoring perspective, we knew that in Dakar that Slack can't score as efficiently as everybody else. They need to like jack up a lot of shots to get to those high scores. Maximum points in the quarter 15. That can't happen. So across all 4 quarters, the highest points tally was 15. That can't happen. Really missed opportunity for Zach. But Zamalek go on to face the US Monastir, which will be a case of the defending champions, or a rematch of the final last year where Zamalek won against Slack. And so it's going to be quite interesting to see how Zamalek play here, because one team is red hot in Monastir, the other team is a little bit cold. And so hopefully in the next 2 days, they'll be able to sort it out. The semifinal is on the 25th, which is on Wednesday. So that's going to be quite interesting to see. But let's have a look at the playoff picture right now. Obviously, we saw the 4 quarterfinalists, and now Petro de Luanda will play FAP in the first semi-final on Wednesday at 6 p.m. GMT, and then in the second one at 9:30 GMT, US Monastir will play Zamalek. That's going to be a cracker of a game. Petro de Luanda lost out in the semi-finals to Zamalek in the last year, so they've got the best chance of making the final, the 2-time African champions. FAP wanted to make the semifinals, so they've reached their goal, hoping to make it to the finals and possibly cause an upset with their defense. Their defense is really good, so we're quite interested to see how they match up against Petro de Luanda along the perimeter. Monastir and Zamalek, massive game. Big men, Majok, Anas. It's going to be a really good game for these two. Remember, Zamalek actually lost the Egyptian championship, so it's going to be quite interesting to see if they'll be hoping to keep their hopes alive of coming back to BAL 3.0 or BAL 2023 by winning this tournament. But Monastir will want to get revenge on the team they lost to in the final. It's going to be quite interesting to see how that happens. That's going to be on Wednesday, and then I'll be back on Thursday to give you the recap, and then we'll talk about a preview of the final, and then I'll be back on probably the following Monday to discuss the finals day, because you've got a 3rd and 4th place playoff between the losers of the 2 conferences. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram as well as on this YouTube channel, so please do like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Mpho as well as on YouTube. But that's me. The Ball and All podcast. We'll be back after the semi-finals. Have a great day. Goodbye and salut.